All right, so in the last tutorial, we took an EPS file that we had created in Illustrator. And it's important that we had finished in Illustrator by creating outlines on everything, so that this was no longer tied to a certain font or to a type tool before we moved it over. So we saved it as an EPS in Illustrator, and then we just brought it into our Photoshop file that's full resolution, so at least 350 pixels per inch at our print size or larger. And we just do that to make sure it comes in as a smart layer by dragging it directly from the desktop and dropping it onto the Photoshop file. Only newer versions of Photoshop can do this, and it's incredibly helpful to be able to use it as a smart object, which means it will always be rasterizing from the original vector to be as clean as possible within whatever resolution. So even though this is now made of pixels, it's going to be at the highest resolution no matter what we do, even if we have to enlarge everything. Okay, then all I did to add effects was I took the effects that I had used for my color hold on top of my spot illustration. So here I have a gray background, but let's turn that off for the moment, and let's review really quickly the coloring that was used for our spot illustration, because that, similar to our logo, started with just a black vector. Okay, so let me strip it here of all the color. So we took our black vector outline, there we see it, nice and clean, brought it in as a smart object, and then the first thing we put behind it, and you can do this with type as well, was what's called flat color. And this flat color isn't using the flatting technique, which just uses the most diverse colors possible so that nothing is touching that's the same. This is using the local flat color technique, where it chooses one color that matches pretty well whatever the local color would be of that object. So the skin, for Link's skin, he's a defined character. I can even go back and work on this flat color a little bit. His skin color is this. This is the color it is, no matter what the lighting in flat color. How did I get on that layer? Let's see. So I see a little blip here where I didn't fill in the flat color as exactly as I could have, so I can fill that in, right? And make them all link up. And then I'm holding down Option to steal my flat colors from other sources, and I'm just filling in those lines completely. Now, flat color is used for quick color reproductions. You'll see it used for Sunday comic strips that are in color. Just very simple, not too fancy. And you'll often see these little registration errors that just take a lot of diligence to correct. So you might, at this point with your spot illustration, know what to look for now as we're finishing up not just our spot illustration with finishing techniques, but the whole poster design that uses them. So there's a little tip of the ear there. Need to finish it up. And it's looking pretty clean. Now the only downside of using a vector outline as a smart object is that I cannot edit that, right? So right there, that little blip there, because it's a vector, I can't erase that edge away without rasterizing it. And I don't want to rasterize it. But when it's a poster and you know exactly what resolution you want, you might go ahead and rasterize it, because you know it's at the resolution you want, which is 350. Once it's rasterized, by which you just right-click on your smart layer and hit rasterize, then I am able to make whatever changes as a pixel that I want to it. So if I use a nice sharp 100% opacity eraser, make sure it's 100% hard, then I can clean that edge up as nicely as I can. And will look just as good as a vector in this poster context. So I can still, since I know the exact purpose of the spot illustration in this instance, I can optimize it towards that use. And because the line work is separate from the color is always underneath it, the flat color, I can just go back and forth and fix such things. All right, so that's flat color, flat local color. This is going to become important later with some of the finishing techniques to make sure you understand this. Not to mention on our final exam, these terms matter conceptually. So once my flat colors are in, and that's the local color for each thing, so these like veins on the leaf are a different green in any light source than the other parts of the leaf, and the underside of the leaf is always going to be a different color in any light source than the top of the leaf. So flat color can still get pretty precise, but it has no highlights or shadows. Any three-dimensional illusion is given by the inking itself, by the line work. You know, where the line's heavier, it looks like it's turning. Where the line's thinner, it looks like there's more light. Now, my general advice in digital coloring is try to do as much with your flat colors as you can. So it's not just a preparatory step, it's a step where you really set the tone for how you're approaching your artwork. And just like you can paint with the flat color, you can also, of course, erase from it. So these are kind of the best flat colors I could use. And then we can modify those flat colors by adding highlights. So this is what kind of highlight? Is it soft edged or cut edge? Right there. Soft, yeah, you can see how it's done with a low opacity soft brush. And then what are these shadows? Are these hard edge or soft edge?
Soft.
Soft, absolutely. So you see that effect, right? And then what about these shadows? Are these hard edged or soft edged? Hard. Right? So those are the different types of what's called duotone coloring, where you split the local color into a highlight and into a shadow. Now, if you add them together, you get fully modeled what's called rendering, where you can see hard edges some places where the shadows are more like cast shadows, like under the bangs or under the nose, and you get very modeled form shadows that are more softly gradated where the form is softer. And so this was kind of a quickly put together mashup of those two. And the only thing that's confusing about the way I set it up is I did, for highlights, I started them with cut edge, like you can see on the hat there, but then I added to it and made it soft edge from there. So that is a little confusing. That's just the way I labeled it. Now, what if I wanted to do more than just highlights and and shadows within each local color. Well, then you get into what's called full spectrum. And if I just do full spectrum alone on my flat color, it looks like this. And that looks really weird. Looks like he's been bruised, right? He has little pinks and yellows on his skin. There's pinks in the leaf and on his cloak. But that, in combination with the shadows, with the duotone color, and with the highlights, it just makes it a little bit more dimensional. Okay? And now, because I have them all on separate layers, if I think that full spectrum color is a little too much, I can downplay it a little, just playing with the opacity, so it's more subtle. The purples and the greens. And you can decide however many of these to use for your own design. All right. I'm getting dizzy zooming in and out so much. The last effect, which I didn't get to fully explain, is what if you want to color the line work itself? And this is how it applies to our type solution. So right now, the line work is just black, and without it, it looks like this. So obviously, we need that black line work to contain everything. But what if I want it to be a red line instead? Well, I can double click on that line work layer, and you can do this whether it's a smart vector layer or not. And I can put a color overlay over it. And if I wanted it to be a red outline, I could. Or a deep brown outline. That's going to look kind of nice with Link. I could. Especially because red, a reddish brown, is a nice complement to all the green. If I wanted to gradate that outline, well, let me just take the opacity down a little bit and then put a gradient overlay underneath it. So the gradient overlay looks like that, from light to dark. But then with that red brownish color over the top, looks like that. Lighter at the top, darker on the bottom. But still very different than just the black. So that's what's called a color hold. But you can also add a layer above, a new blank layer above your line work to do color holds of a different sort. So I think this sword is a little too dark, all in all. So I'm just going to paint on a color hold layer something for that scabbard. So let's see. So I have it hard edged right now. I want to make it soft edged. And maybe I don't want it full opacity. So I'm going to kind of paint a little bit of this scabbard in on top of the black line. And because I'm doing that, that's what's called a color hold. And then here, the tip is kind of gold. I want to extend that gold out and show that it's quite dark. I can even steal some of my other colors. Or that the gold is there right at the tip of the blade. In fact, I might even carry that up all the way. So his scabbard looks to be kind of this tan goldish color with these little slightly red accents. Right, so all of those are done on top of the line work, and that is what's called a color hold. When is this most commonly used? Well, for special effects. So if I want to show that this is a jewel that's glowing on his bag, well, I would do color holds on it, and I would use really saturated color. Paint that on top. Show that it's glowing, and then maybe blur it out a little bit in certain places. Lots of different effects you can get. And then I can make it glow if I want to. Easiest way to do that is with layer styles, just an outer glow on all of these. So you're going to see how this relates very directly to what we're doing with the type. And you can have multiple color hold layers. So if